10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And lift off. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
We're now at T plus 35 seconds into the 5th rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9.
Coming up in just a few seconds, we'll hear the call out for Stage 1 throttle down.
Stage 1 throttle down.
Falcon 9 engines throttling down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
This period is known as max Q, and once the vehicle... There we just heard that the vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Once through max Q, we'll throttle those Merlin engines back up.
Max Q. Stage 1 throttle up.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. The crew is already pulling over 2 Gs. And next up is going to be a couple of events in rapid succession. First will be engine chill on the second stage and back engine. And there you heard that call out. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines igniting will cut off in preparation for second stage separation. Then we'll see the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage ignite and continue to carry the Crew 5 astronauts to orbit.
Just like we did on first stage, that MVAC chill is intended to help pre-chill the hardware prior to the full flow of that densified liquid oxygen.
Stage 1 throttle down.
At this point in time, those 9 Merlin engines are beginning to throttle down in preparation for MECO, or main engine cutoff.
Standing by for MECO.
Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy 2 Alpha.
There we should see that second engine begin to ignite now. And obviously confirmed by the loud cheer behind us here at Mission Control Hawthorne.
And we're also in 2 Alpha for the aborts if needed. Again, second stage is lit and continuing to carry the Crew 5 astronauts into orbit.
We're now getting a view of the first stage after that stage separation. The second stage is still being illuminated by that single Merlin vacuum engine, and that's on the right-hand side of your screen. First stage on the left-hand side of your screen, making its way back to Earth. We will be attempting to land it on our drone ship, which today we are using Just Read the Instructions.
Acquisition signal, Bermuda.
And we did hear that acquisition of the ground station in Bermuda. The first stage is continuing to make its way back to Earth, and the second stage is going to continue.
Trajectory nominal.
Another good call, trajectory nominal.
Dragon copy.
Confirmation there from Commander Nicole Mann. You can also sort of see the Space Coast there in the background of the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen. It also looks like you can actually see the thrust plume created by the first stage as it's now rotating just out of screen.
Second stage is going to continue firing until a little over 8 minutes into the flight, really doing the heavy lifting now, getting the crew into orbit.
Everything continues to look nominal on both first and second stages. As I mentioned before, the first stage we made a landing on one of our drone ships, which is currently parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. So we can see now that confirmation there that trajectory.
The second stage now travels 5,400 miles per hour. Crew is pulling a little more than 1 G right now. That's going to continue to ramp up, peaking just before we get to second stage cutoff here in just a few minutes from now.
First stage will be performing 2 separate burns, a re-entry burn where we reignite 3 of the Merlin the Merlin M1D engines on the first stage. We ignite the center engine into radial engines to help slow it down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. And then the second final burn, and that will be the landing burn on our drone ship.
And the single MVAC engine that you see. The single MVAC engine that you see on the right of your screen is continuing to fire. We did hear another call out. The trajectory is nominal. Crew heading in the direction that they are supposed to be. This single engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space, now over 200 kilometers in altitude. We will start to hit events now in a rapid succession as the first stage continues to make its way back to Earth, and the second stage continues its burn, just a couple minutes left in that burn.
For those of you just joining us, just over 6.5 minutes ago, our 4 Crew 5 astronauts launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they are now making their way into orbit on the second stage inside Crew Dragon, which we're hearing that the trajectory on that is nominal.
Dragon copy.
They are safe inside Dragon Endurance, whereas the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen is making its way back to Earth. We are coming up to the re-entry burn, which, as I said before, we ignite 3 of the 9 Merlin engines to help slow the booster down as it re-enters the dense part of the Earth's atmosphere. As the entry burn completes, we'll be in the final...
Stage 1, entry burn startup.
So there we heard the call out. You can there see it on your screen that that entry burn has been initiated.
And as that entry burn completes, we'll be in the final different abort phases here shortly, which essentially correspond to areas along the very northeastern seaboard of the U.S.
Stage 1, entry burn shut down.
Great news, that entry burn was shut down, and then those last all the way across the Atlantic off the coast of Scotland for those abort zones.
Everything continues to look nominal for both the first and second stages.
And the crew with the second stage still attached is now traveling over 13,000 miles per hour.
We're about 10 seconds away from SECO 1.
Copy, Shannon.
Shannon,
Stage 1, transonic.
that call out for Shannon, Ireland, indicative of our final abort zone. After this, we'll see second stage shut off, and we'll be listening for confirmation of a good orbit, which tells us the crew and Dragon are exactly where they need to be.
And there we had confirmation that the
Stage
MVAC
1, landing burn.
has shut down simultaneously. The entry...
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And you heard that call for a good insertion. We will coast for a few minutes.
There we can see the drone ship coming into view as Falcon 9 attempts.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
You can see those landing legs have now deployed. And as you can see on your screen, and you can hear by the clapping and cheering behind me, Falcon 9 has landed on our drone ship just through the instructions, parked off the coast of Florida.
And again, that second stage separation will be coming up just a couple of minutes now. We do coast for a few minutes after second engine cutoff to allow any rates or motion to dampen out and settle. And looks like we're going to get a view of the second stage as it separates here shortly. We did hear that the crew has been successfully inserted into a good orbit. Again, the crew is still attached to the second stage.
We are expecting stage separation to occur in just over a minute from now, about 1 minute and 8 seconds. And that's when the, when the second stage will separate from the Dragon trunk. The Dragon trunk is the part of hardware where we are able to house the cargo that is able to be exposed to the vacuum of space, as well as the solar panels which help power Dragon while it is on orbit. Again, that stage separation is now coming up in about 30 seconds. After stage separation, we will have nose cone deployment. Now that Dragon is in the vacuum of space, we will be able to open the nose cone and expose that forward hatch, which is what is utilized to dock autonomously with the International Space Station.
And that nose cone does stay closed for the flight uphill to help protect all of the guidance, navigation, and control sensors.
Live coverage of the Crew 5 mission continues. The 4 Crew 5 crew members currently on board Dragon asleep. They're in, as we've talked about a couple of times, they're essentially in an off-duty time for the vast majority of their 29-hour trip from launch to docking to the space station, pretty much managing their own schedule on the way up. Again, there's 4 of them inside that capsule, that Crew Dragon Endurance right now. Nicole Mann there in the center on the right. She's the commander of Crew 5. To the left there is NASA astronaut Josh Cassada. He's the pilot, both of them making their first trips into space. On the right side, that's JAXA astronaut Koichi Wakata making his 5th space flight with this mission, his first on a Crew Dragon, having already flown on the space shuttle and the Russian Soyuz. And then on the left there is Russian cosmonaut Anna Kikina, also making her first trip into space. So 3 first-time flyers, 1 very well-seasoned veteran on this Crew 5 mission, currently making its way to the space station. So as of right now, we're a little under 8 hours. We're at 7 hours, 45 minutes, 21 seconds and counting since launch. And we've still got a bit of a ways to go. We're less than 24 hours from docking at this point, but we still have a lot of the different phasing burns, or really firings of those engines on Dragon to catch up with the International Space Station. So we've already executed that first one, the first major phase burn, which kind of kicks everything off. That happens in the first hour of launch. That was done successfully. The next major maneuver is going to be that boost burn. That's going to do a big push to really raise up the Dragon's orbit. That'll be a little under a 9-minute firing of those Draco boosters on the outside of the capsule to gradually raise us up until we're only about 10 kilometers beneath the station. And then we're going to do a burn called the closed co-elliptic to really circularize our orbit. And this graphic is all relative positioning to space station. So you've got space station in the top left corner there. Those dotted lines represent an altitude beneath the station. And again, this is not drawn perfectly to scale, but we'll get through that closed co-elliptic burn. We'll do another one called the transfer burn. That'll put us up on an orbit just about 2.5 kilometers below the station, so a lot closer. We do that final co-elliptic burn, again, just to circularize things, and that's when the action really starts to pick up. We'll get into integrated operations. The crew, by that point, will be awake. They'll put their SpaceX suits back on. They'll get into their seats. We'll typically do a round of leak checks. So crew will get suited up. We'll head into integrated operations, where the team here in Houston, working in stepwise fashion with the team out there in Hawthorne and MCCX, overseeing the flight of Dragon, while the team here in Houston oversees the integrated operations as we bring Dragon closer and closer in to the space station. We'll execute that approach initiation maneuver. That'll move us in closer, and then we'll start stepping through what are known as the waypoints. So these are pre-positioned areas around the station where Dragon can either hold if we need to, or if everything looks good, we'll just continue to fly through them. So waypoint 0, 400 meters below. Waypoint 1 is going to be about 220 meters just in front of the space station. So we're going to the node 2 forward. So this is actually a view from Crew 1. So this is a little bit different than what we'll see, but this gives you an idea of what it's like to actually fly up to the space station. So in this instance, this is a Dragon approaching the zenith of the space-facing port. That's why you can see the Earth passing beneath the station, and you can see a Dragon actually docked still to that forward port. So where you see a Dragon dock, that's where Crew 5's headed. There's currently the Crew 4 Dragon, Dragon Freedom, is docked to the zenith port. So they did essentially what we're watching right now. This is a replay, though, from the Crew 1 mission. But once they get onto what's known as the docking axis, that's essentially right in front of your docking port. And for Crew 5, it's going to be 220 meters in front of the Node 2 forward port. They can pause, or they'll pass right through. If we get the go from the team in Houston, that'll move them inside the keep out sphere, eventually moving until we get to waypoint 2. That one we will pause, and that's where we do our final go, no go for docking. So that's just final checks. Everybody on the SpaceX side and the NASA side, the international partners operating the space station, all confirm they're ready for the station to receive Dragon, and everything on Dragon systems look good. And then it automatically does that final fly in from just 20 meters away, ultimately linking up with the station in that Node 2 forward port. And then we step into all of the usual hatch operations. That takes a couple of hours to pressurize the vestibule, that space between the 2 hatches. We have one of the crew members on station, who in this case is going to be Kjell Lindgren, is going to be leading the hatch operations on the station side. And then we'll have the crew 5 astronauts on board. We're going to have 11 crew members on the space station for a short period of time. But once Dragon does arrive, we'll get to a grand total of 5 vehicles docked to the space station. As mentioned, we'll have 2 Dragons. We'll have Endurance on the forward port, right as you can see it now added there. Crew Dragon 4, Dragon Freedom, still docked to that zenith port. It'll stay there until next week. And then we have 2 Russian Progress vehicles delivering cargo to the Russian segment, along with Soyuz MS-22, which just a couple of weeks ago delivered 3 of the newest crew members on board, including NASA astronaut Frank Rubio, also making his first flight into space.
Go for Dragon.
Hey, Nicole, just checking in. You've got a new shift down here in Hawthorne to get through docking today. No major changes to your timeline. We see you about 2 kilometers below the station and 30 kilometers behind, but catching up fast with the approach chute burn in just about 6 minutes now.
Okay, Dragon copies. We see the OOP burn, and we also see AI, and we got a good view of station already. It was looking pretty beautiful out the window. Looking forward to working with you, Jake, and team.
Excellent. Glad to hear it, Nicole. As a FYI, station is not tracking any major issues today heading into docking either. On the other side of the UPERN, the next big event is suit dawn at 1843. Feel free to start cleaning up the cabin in preparation for that.
Sounds like a good plan. We're going to change into comfort garments, so if you could go external on cameras.
Stand by one.
And there it is. There's the International Space Station as seen from Dragon. As it approaches, we'll continue to see this grow larger and larger in the frame of view. And in this view here of the International Space Station, you can make out the solar arrays. Those are those pieces on either side. Now, right now, Dragon is getting its power from its own solar arrays that are found on the trunk of the vehicle. But once it does dock to space station, some umbilicals will be hooked up, which will provide power from the space station. So at that point, Dragon will be configured to be receiving its power from the space station.
And it looks like that is a view from station of Dragon. So there we can see planet Earth rotating as Dragon catches up to the space station. As I mentioned before, I love views like this because it kind of shows just how grand all the operations are. As we've said multiple times, everything is very controlled and choreographed, and it's pretty cool to see Dragon just get closer and closer. We saw the crew in their seats earlier, all strapped in with their suits on, but as I mentioned before, I would personally just have my face against the window the whole time, just looking out. There we can see that the nose cone has been deployed. We did that several minutes after liftoff. I think it was around T plus 12 minutes or so. And we do that once Dragon has already passed through the atmosphere of Earth, when it's in, then once it gets into the vacuum of space.
And there you can see that view again, the moon in the farthest portion of your screen there, the furthest back circle, Dragon in the middle, and the International Space Station in the closest field of view, of course, with our pale blue dot underneath it.
The station and crew Dragon are traveling at 17,000 miles per hour, 17,500 miles per hour around planet Earth. So while it looks like Earth is rotating slowly, it's actually going pretty quick. The station is roughly 250 miles above Earth. You can think of that as the distance from Los Angeles to San Francisco, or perhaps from Kennedy Space Center to Miami, depending on which frame of reference relates most to you.
SpaceX on the Big Loop, Houston and Hawthorne have pulled go for docking. Confirm visors down and that you are ready for approach 2.
SpaceX Crew 5, all visors are down. We are ready for approach 2.
Copy Crew 5, visors down. We're going to enable the approach shortly. As a reminder, once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
Copy.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. Dragon is resuming approach and is go for docking. Monitor for steps 5 and 6 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies. We'll go.
And that's the call we wanted to hear. Dragon is go for docking. Just a few meters away from the space station now, but when we are about at the 2 meter point, you may hear a call called CHOP, and that stands for the crew hands-off period. While everything has been done autonomously today so far, when we do hear that call CHOP, it means that any re-rendezvous would need to be done automatically through Dragon, and the crew would not be initiating any of that. We are 16 meters away from the International Space Station. On the left is Crew Dragon Endurance coming in for docking. On the top right, with its nose cone deployed, is the Crew Dragon Freedom that is currently docked to the International Space Station and is the vehicle that Crew 4 will return home on.
Copy, 5 meters.
And that call, 5 meters separating Dragon from Space Station. Should be about a minute until we are docked and Crew 5 is home for the next few months. Should hear that call for CHOP here momentarily.
2 meters, CHOP.
And there it was.
Copy, 2 meters.
2 meters, crew hands off point. Happens about 25 seconds before contact.
1 meter.
1 meter.
Dragon,
capture.
SpaceX on the big loop, contact and soft capture complete. Attenuation in progress.
And contact confirmed. Dragon made contact with the International Space Station at 2:01 p.m. Pacific, just off the west coast of Africa.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, you are go for Dragon hatch opening for the decal, followed by the remaining actions in 4.400, Section 6.
Dragon copies, we're opening the forward hatch and finishing up Section 6.
And you just heard confirmation to the crew that they are go for hatch opening. That hatch we've been waiting for is now open since docking at 4:01 p.m. Central Time, 5:01 p.m. Eastern Time. Hatch opening taking place at 5:49 p.m. Central, 6:49 p.m. Eastern Time. All smiles on the International Space Station as they eagerly await the ingress of Crew 5. The hatch is open, but Crew 5 astronauts will need to work through a few more steps and gather some imagery as well. The crew inside of Dragon Endurance are installing some IMV ducting, mixing the air of the space station environment with the air inside the Crew Dragon Endurance. They'll seal some of the LiO, or lithium hydroxide cartridges that scrub carbon dioxide inside of Dragon capsule on the ride to the International Space Station, and they'll check some vent valves as well, so maybe just a little bit more time until we welcome them on board the International Space Station. And here we come through. First one through the hatch is going to be Nicole Mann, commander of Dragon, and now the first Native American woman to live and stay aboard the International Space Station. All hugs and smiles going around. Next one through the hatch is Josh Cassada, the pilot of Dragon. He's getting his welcome and hellos from the crew aboard the International Space Station.